All right, continue our conversation here at SEC Media Days, TexAgs.com, TexAgs Radio. Josh Pate, our good friend, is here with us. I got something to tell you.
Yep.
You're not going to like it, okay?
Great.
In, I don't know what year it was, 98, I fell asleep during Twister in the theater.
Okay, well.
And I'm sorry, I just couldn't get into it. It was loud. The new trailer looks good, and I love the lifestyle. I've worked in news for a long time. I know a lot of people who follow storms, but that movie just didn't do it for me. I'm sorry.
I don't know how you want me to respond to that. Notice I can't even make eye contact with you right now. I'm just looking down at the ground.
Is that like Shawshank for you?
It's nature's Shawshank, like just tornadoes instead of a prison warden.
Right.
Yes, basically. Here's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
Since then, have you resampled it?
No.
Okay. Well, it's just the younger you who has misled the more mature, more seasoned you. So, right now, you don't know what you don't know. And so I know we can seamlessly transition that to what Mike Elko could do in year one.
Right.
But I just encourage you, one more time.
Give it another chance.
Over the next week.
Okay.
Don't watch it on TV because there's a million commercials, but just sample it. Just sample it. And if you still come back to me and maintain this opinion, I don't have to be friends with everyone.
Sure.
Like we don't have to be
We can
cordial.
head nod and work, right?
We can still talk every 6 months or so, but...
Is it in your top 5 movies of all time?
Yeah, no, that's a personal thing. Yes. I don't expect it to be in everyone's top 5. But yeah, I mean, I actually live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. The one thing they nailed what the vibe is on the road of being a storm chaser.
Which you've done.
Yeah, like the culture, what it's like out on the road, that stuff. Everybody picks it apart and says, oh, from an atmospheric science standpoint, it's this and that. It's a 1996 action movie. Like, it is what it is on that front.
Right.
Take it for what it is. But they could not have nailed it anymore in terms of capturing what it's like in that world had they set out to shoot a documentary. It was great.
Top 5 movies, if you can think of them.
Okay, so Field of Dreams is my favorite of all time.
Love it.
I am a big Jaws guy. I'm a big Shawshank guy. I am a big fan of Forrest Gump.
Okay.
And Twister is in my top 5.
Okay.
I think that's my top 5. I think, although Almost Famous is an incredible movie. So Almost Famous is certainly top 10, borders on top 5, depending on what kind of mood I'm in any given week.
So where we can agree is there's certain movies that are in my top 5 that I know are not the best movies of all time, but like I love The Equalizer 1.
Fair.
I freaking love it. I love any vigilante movie. American Assassin, love it. The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, love it.
Yep.
Godfathers, all of them. I don't care. I love them, even 3. And let's see, Scarface, my family heritage, Cuban heritage.
So the one thing about the Jaws franchise is you can't just casually say, I love all of them. Jaws 3, I love all of them.
Right.
Because Jaws 3 fell off a cliff.
That was the 3D one, right?
That's an abomination. We don't even acknowledge. In the Jaws community, we don't acknowledge the 3D.
Are they going to bring back Jaws in another?
How do you not?
You have to, right?
How do you not? We got folks being... I don't want to make light of shark attacks happening on the Gulf Coast, but it's very prevalent right now.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right.
I was shocked, to talk about Twister again for a second, I was shocked it took them a quarter century to do a sequel for the second highest grossing movie of 1996. And like storm chasing is way more prevalent now than it was then. Everyone knows it now. They've made 47 Fast and Furious movies. It took them this long to remake that, and they're remaking Gladiator coming out later this year.
That looks good. That trailer looked pretty good with Denzel.
I never knew that Denzel existed in ancient Rome, but he did. Same exact accent as he's always had. It's
same character, too, yeah. Hey, one last thing on Twister, because we got to talk college football. I'm sorry for not knowing. I'm sure it's out there. Are the old characters involved at all?
Here's the problem. Here is what a lot of us thought was going to be the big hang-up. So Bill Paxton, one of the lead characters in the original, passed away.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that, yeah.
And so he's not there. Helen Hunt, to my knowledge, is not in it. I don't know that.
Okay.
But none of the leads. I did
forget about that, yeah.
None of the leads from 96 are in the new one.
Okay.
It's all new names. I'm sure you may have a cameo or two, but it's new names. The Tornado is still the star, though.
By the way, I'm sorry, because we're doing sequel. This is Pate doing sequel talk.
Yes.
The Axel Foley Beverly Hills Cop movie was actually really good, and I was so worried because Part 3 was horrendous. 1 and 2. 4 felt like the old ones. I don't know if you saw it yet, but it was really good.
You got to be careful. We could do our own movie podcast, obviously.
We should.
You got to be careful. Like everyone always says, should this movie have a sequel? And there's always this, oh no, as if it's a no-brainer, or absolutely as if it's a no-brainer. It's never a no-brainer to me, unless you really did start, tell, and complete the story in version 1. it's always who's on board, what's the creative, who has their hands on the wheel for the sequel. And so, like, you can't guarantee, like, that synergy throughout a franchise.
Yep.
Which is always why it's a total crapshoot.
All right, let's talk a little football.
Let's
we'll
do it.
start with A&M.
Okay.
I know you're bullish on them and Coach Elko and whatnot, and I'm finding out a lot of other media are also too like, hey, yeah, we and bullish might mean 9-3.
Right.
Some people are telling me, hey, be happy with an 8-4 season. Our fan base needs more than 8-4.
Yep.
But I understand why people would say that would be a good year.
Yeah. So this time of year, a lot of people are bullish on a lot of teams, and so you'll get called like a homer.
Sure.
I'll say things like, they nailed the hire on Mike Elko, which they did. All right, that doesn't necessarily correlate with 11-1 in year one or anything like that. So you either get accused of homerism or you get accused of fence riding. In reality, and to me, the reality is, it's possible for A&M to go 8-4 this year and have nailed the hire.
Yep.
It's possible for them to go 10-2 and have nailed the hire. Like, this game is involving a very oblong-shaped ball. We're scoring 3s and 7s. Couple of random bounces, just margins like that determine the difference in 3 wins. So I don't always like to wait until the end of the year to go full on you are what your record says you are mode, because I don't believe in that. And so, what I believe in is, and you guys know this on the ground way more than I do, when you get feedback about how organized, how attention to detail oriented the process is there, how thorough the evaluation is in going and acquiring talent, and it had to be that way at Duke, so it's just that way now with a ton more resources. When you get all that, how are you not bullish on it? I don't care that maybe Mike Elko's name didn't dominate the headlines, because when DeBoer came into Bama, I mean, that was like a fish's tail muddying up the water. Yep. No one was going to notice them hiring anything less than a superstar head coach.
Sure.
They may have hired a superstar head coach, it's just he's going to become a star at A&M instead of having already been one, which is the inverse of the way they went last time. And he's announced and he's a national championship winning head coach. Well, Mike Elko's resume is still yet to be written. He's going to write it in College Station. But, dude, if you know what you're looking at in this game, I'm not sure how you're not bullish. You don't have to predict 7 national titles over the next decade or anything like that. You don't even have to predict double-digit wins this year. But, man, I was talking to a head coach the other day. It was like last month now, but I was talking to him, and he's several years into his tenure now, but he was saying people just don't get how pivotal it is, the situation that you inherit.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks they get that, but he said, think about this. If I inherit a roster that was just mismanaged, if I'm good at my job, I may be ready to win in year one.
Yep.
If I'm not, year one is tearing that thing down, and we happen to play 12 football games in the process. Year 2 is just the beginning of a rebuild. Year 3 is the first time we get our legs under us. That's the difference in 3 years of judgment. So where do we think Mike Elko is? I would say he's a lot more towards the former than the latter. So it's okay to have expectation this year, but if he doesn't deliver, to the degree that you said Aggie fans want him to, doesn't mean anything. I'll just put it like this, I doubt we get to December and they've done whatever they do this year, but let's say it's on the lower end of things, and we look at it and we say, is it time to question this hire? It's hard for me to see that kind of outcome.
As an A&M analyst and an A&M fan, I think it's hard for people to take my words when I talk about Texas or LSU, right? But I look at Texas, I'm like, kind of a cakewalk schedule, and they've had all these nail-biters in the Big 12. And while they have the roster, no doubt about it, I have my questions. Like, how do you win those close games in the SEC where every game comes down to the wire, even those great national championship teams, when you struggle with U of H at the end or Houston, when you struggle at TCU? Like, just take me through what your thought process is with Texas, because I do think they're really good, but it's a different animal in the SEC.
I think it's the difference in tightrope walking 10 feet above the ground versus 10 stories above the ground. Mm-hmm. It's the same wire. It's supposed to be the exact same process.
Sure.
But if you're only 10 feet off the ground, you know as well as I do, there's just a different looseness to you that there wouldn't be if you're 10 stories off the ground. They knew they were 10 feet off the ground. And this is the way I look at it. I could be dead wrong. But generally speaking, Texas or anyone else, when you're playing in the conference they came from, and you know you're the more talented team 10 times out of 10 on the field on Saturday, that is the 10-foot tightrope walk.
Yep.
And man, we could wobble here. If we fall, It's going to hurt, but I mean, we'll be okay. We'll get right back up there. And that is basically playing the teams they used to play. Now, the thing about it is, if you go up 10 stories, you can tell yourself, well, now that we know we're in the SEC, we won't have that wobbly tire. We won't allow ourselves to have that looseness. And if that's really as simple as it is, okay. However, if maybe you develop some poor habits, if maybe there's still some looseness or wobble to your program that's there because it doesn't magically fix itself overnight, that's how you find yourself in a dogfight with Mississippi State.
Right.
Like we've A&M knows, we've seen that
know.
before. And you sit there, like we could look at the schedules right now they put in front of us, and everybody does the win, loss, win, loss, win. It's the ones that you penciled in as wins already. Those are the ones that bite you. Everybody knows the Georgia game's big.
Yep.
Everybody knows going to Kyle Field at the end of the season's big. It's just the randomness that's thrown in there. Ironically, Arkansas is a perfect example. That is part of the ammunition that you put in the chamber as firing off these tweets that they have a workable schedule. But it could totally bite you if you don't have, what we're talking about fixed. So it's a great unknown to me. And we could, like the personnel at Texas, the defensive line talent that they lost and stuff like that, almost notwithstanding. Like, yeah, you could have an entire show's worth of conversation about that. It's the ethos and the identity of the program. It's no different for them than anyone else. They just happen to be stepping into a new world where what they could kind of get away with in years past, they can't get away with anymore.
Absolutely. I 100% agree that. Let's Ole Miss today talking. I find Lane Kiffin to be such an interesting guy, and repeating myself, but I don't like when he talks about A&M.
Yeah.
But I love when he talks about everybody else. He's fun. He's good for college football.
Yep. I think a lot of people have that opinion about him.
Yeah.
I don't like when he talks about me. I do like when he talks about everyone else. Do you notice, like I've noticed, that everybody's trying to get on record as saying, I really like Ole Miss. Watch out for Ole Miss. There's a bunch of that. There's no one predicting them to win the SEC.
Yeah.
It's almost like everyone wants to be on record as saying, oh, I knew Ole Miss would be good. No one's taking that added step.
Like, they should win it.
Yeah, like in any other world, when we've come into a season, in the past, if we talked about Florida like that, or any year, Alabama, Georgia, I could find you someone that's predicting them to win it.
Yep.
Outside that local beat. I can't find anybody, nationally or regionally, that's willing to walk the added step out on that plank and say, that's not just a contender, that's my winner. So that begs the follow-up question, which I haven't gotten a consistent answer on this question from anyone. What is success for them this year? Because the last 2 years, their product at the end was good enough to make a 12-team playoff. We just didn't have a 12-teamer yet. So if they do nothing more than what they've been doing, they make the 12-team playoff. So let's say they're a solid 10-2 team.
Yep.
Maybe they don't go to Atlanta, but they make the playoff. They're one and done. Is that success because they made the playoff? They're telling me, Ole Miss folks are telling me, this is the best team we've had. So if it's the best team you had, I would imagine that means expectation is higher than it's been, which means you got to do more than just make the playoff.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's unless they make the playoff and win at least a playoff game, I'm not so sure that the locals over there won't look and say, good year, but ultimately this is a disappointment. It's the same way with like an LSU. LSU's team last year would have been good enough to make it. But how in the world do you have a Heisman quarterback and allow LSU defense, of all things, to erode to the point where it got wasted?
Yeah.
So like just talking in July about programs like that aren't there at the doorstep every year, they're at the doorstep. What do we consider success? Like at Georgia, it's title or bust. Ohio State, title or bust. It's not title or bust at Ole Miss, but I don't think it's just strictly playoff or bust either. I think
got to get a win in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Last thing for you, and it's probably hard to talk about, but like, which coach do you think has the chance to last the longest? Billy Napier or Sam Pittman?
Man, I'd still go Napier.
Pittman could be gone by October, man.
Yeah, and in fairness, I think Pittman, even if both programs were operating seamlessly, I don't see a ton more runway in Sam Pittman's career. Yeah. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who you'd see wheeled out on the sideline or something like that. Napier, Florida, that transcends the SEC. That's one of the biggest questions in the country this year, not just the conference. Because, I talked to some of the odds maker folks. I said, take Florida as is. Don't change anything about them. Just want you to change their schedule. I just want you to put them in another conference. And, man, like there are some Big 12 schedules. There's some ACC schedules where I had odds makers tell me we'd put their total at 8.5 wins. So what are you? What metric, what scale are we using?
Sure.
Because there's a world where, let's just say chalk held every week. If I got Florida playing 6 of the top 20 teams in the country, that means they theoretically could be the 22nd best team in the country and go 6-6.
Yep.
And at the end of the day in December, no one cares because you wouldn't actually be ranked 22 if you lost 6 games. And so there wouldn't be a proper metric on how good you are. Nobody in your crowd would care. Everyone's going to throw you are what your record says you are at you again. And the thing about it is when we were down there in the spring, I've never gotten access like I've gotten in our trip there. We sat in player personnel meetings, recruiting meetings. We thoroughly, I mean, I'm talking about like deep dive thoroughly and forensically got to see every bit of the operation. Yeah. It's a big time operation with people who know what they're doing. They just haven't gotten the results yet. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how impressive it is if you don't get results. But I think people look at that place and like, there's a difference in having wet wood, because that's never going to light,
yep,
versus having wood that for whatever reason we just hadn't got it to light yet. They feel like the latter to me. I just don't know if we're in, and I don't want to say this about a multimillionaire head coach, I don't know if this is the most fair environment this year to judge them, because there could be a lot of improvement on that team that you never know by their record.
I want to tie it all together because you mentioned something about Florida, if they're in the Big 12, maybe 8.5 wins. And Texas is coming from the Big 12. And I'm going to use A&M as my example here. Had A&M, all the struggles they've had the last couple of years, that personnel, that talent with Jimbo in the Big 12, we're talking about a 9 or 10 win team those years, right?
Yeah, you are. You're talking about, again, change nothing else. Just change the conference sticker affiliation. Now, the follow-up is, of course,
do you get those players in the Big 12?
Do you get those players in the Big 12? But if we did nothing more, because you're using someone else's logic against them.
Sure.
I've always thought it's insane that we just blindly think every record's created equal. Well, if we do that, conference affiliation when it comes to talent acquisition shouldn't matter. All conferences are equal, right? Well, of course they're not, but you can use their logic against them. Having said that, the one blessing that comes along with that curse of an SEC schedule is if you've got deficiencies, they'll get exposed.
Yep.
And therefore, maybe you find out you've got the wrong guy a little bit quicker than you would in other conferences. And so get a new guy in there, see what happens.
Twisters coming soon. I'm going to give it a second. Twister 1, I'm going to give it a second chance.
Twister before Twisters. And soundtrack's not bad either now.
Yeah.
And one of the most underrated soundtracks in the entire history of cinema.
And then what's the follow-up to Twisters?
Just Twisters with 2 S's.
Okay, 2 S's. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you.